And I'm anticipating this group will have even more questions. That's my experience with college grad students, because most of you are grad students, right? Most of you. Because the undergrads are perspiring with preparing for final exams, except a few that are here just because joining us. Is there anybody here that needs an introduction to what is Bhagavad Gita? You don't need an introduction to what is Bhagavad Gita. They didn't know, but now they know something, and now you're going to learn a little more something. So, as you can see on the screen, this is a little different picture than what we shared with the Chinese devotees. This is showing the scene before the battle begins. And before the battle begins, this is chapter 1 Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 1 Bhagavad Gita is a retelling of what you see on the screen. Because Krishna and Balaram both, before, they're cousins of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. In fact, the Kauravas and the Pandavas are cousins. Where the term Pandavas and Kauravas came from, it was Duryodhana. Duryodhana didn't want to consider them relatives, so they gave a different name. But, Pandu was a Kaurava, and the Pandavas were Kauravas. But just to differentiate, we're the Kauravas, and they're the Pandavas. Cousins. And the amongst the Pandavas, I'm just doing a little background. Amongst the Pandavas, there was the eldest, and that's Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira had already conducted the Rajasuya Yagya. You all know what Rajasuya Yagya is. It's the Yagya that establishes the emperor of the world. And he was entitled to that title because his father was the emperor and he was the eldest son. He's entitled by law of progenitor, he was entitled to become the next king. So he became the next king. There's details and details, skipping some of those details. Yudhishthira is already king, but Duryodhana didn't like it. And so by this method and that method, without telling the whole Mahabharata story, they were in exile for 14 years. When they came back, they were given a place to stay, but not the capital. And the place that they were given to stay was a forest. It was like a forest of this part of the kingdom. What was that forest name? Indraprastha. I'm not going to do the whole Mahabharata. It's such a Mahabharata. It's fascinating. Mayadanava his life was saved by Arjuna. This whole history with skipping the details. His life was saved by Arjuna. So Mayadanava was a mystic, and Mayadanava said, "I'm indebted to you. I'd like to reciprocate with my gratitude for what you've done. So please accept some benediction from me." Arjuna said, "It's my duty. I don't do things to get something. It's my duty to protect. So I protected, and I don't need something back from protecting." Krishna said, "Ask for something. Here's what you should ask for. Have Mayadanava, he's mystical, let him build a palace, a mystical palace in the middle of the forest in Indraprastha. And then the Pandavas, Yudhishthira and your brothers can stay there." So Arjuna nodded, "Yeah, okay." Mayadanava built Indraprastha. And it was in Indraprastha that this Rajasuya Yagya occurred. There's details and details, but the point I wanted to make is Yudhishthira is already the emperor. And Duryodhana didn't like it. He was in the capital, Hastinapur, and they're in Indraprastha. So anyway, many things happened, and things happened, and things happened, and there's a war. Many things happened. We discussed one of those things that happened yesterday. One of the things that happened was, you know your geography of India. Dwarka's way over there on the western side of India. And he went all the way from Hastinapur with many of the Yadu members to come all the way to Hastinapur and make a peace offering. Let's not have war. Your cousin brothers, let's not have war. The day before he got there, Duryodhana is such a nasty fellow. He in the public assembly, Krishna's coming, I'm going to have him arrested, tied up, and put in jail. Captive prisoner. So there. And he said it in front of Bhishma Dev. And he said it in front of Vidura. And the whole assembly. Bhishma Dev took exception. He chastised Dhritarashtra. You're not stopping him. He's diabolical. You're his father. He will do what you say, but you're saying nothing. Shame on you. I mean, scolded him. And then he turned to Duryodhana and said, you're going to bring destruction to the whole dynasty because you're such a bad person. You can't take any good instruction. I'm leaving. And he walked out of the assembly. Krishna came, tried to make a peace settlement, no peace settlement. Not only no peace, he insulted Krishna, and then he insulted Vidura. Vidura left. So Krishna knew he wasn't going to say yes. He knew the man's nature. Anyway, so the war's starting. Krishna made a pledge. I'm not going to be party to either side. Balaram, Krishna's brother, I'm not going to be party to. So Balaram went on pilgrimage, and Krishna said in the presence of Arjuna, this is nice, in the presence of Arjuna and Duryodhana standing by Krishna's head. Krishna was resting, lying on a couch. Duryodhana, you get first pick. Either you take all of my armies from the Yadu dynasty or me, but I won't fight. I'll take your armies, please. Arjuna was standing at Krishna's feet. He said, I'll take you. And Krishna said, I won't fight. It's okay. Just be with me. Victory. Assured, according to Bhagavad Gita. Victory is assured with those two. So there they are. Krishna is the chariot, the chauffeur, the taxi driver. There's the chariot. Arjuna was asked Krishna to draw the chariot between the two armies. So there's the array of the two armies. Very nice artist depiction of vast armies. Vast armies. Chapter 1, Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna threw down his weapons. I can't do this. For this reason, that all very good ethical, moral, plausible reasons. Good arguments. Bhagavad Gita could end it right there. But Krishna then scolded him. Then comes the instruction of Bhagavad Gita. So I wanted to speak about Bhagavad Gita because it's Gita Jayanti. But the topic that I would like to speak about is chapter 13. I'm going to spare you and me going through a little mini summary of the first 12 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. I spoke on this some days ago, but I'll spare you the chapters 1 through 6 and then 7 through 12. But I'll say this. In chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, that's the introduction of Krishna's teaching. And Krishna's teaching, you're not the body. Arjuna, you're speaking like a learned person. But no learned person identifies with the body. Learned person knows we're spirit, soul, not the body. And you're all about the body. You have good ethical, moral, body reasons, but it has nothing to do with who you really are. So let me give you a little lesson about who you really are. Chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita, in simple, super simple language. And then the yoga system, Sankhya Yoga, Bodhi Yoga, Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, Introduction to Bhakti Yoga, Yoga Ladder, first 6 chapters. Middle 6 chapters. Here's how to perform Bhakti Yoga. That's what middle 6 chapters is. Krishna announces it. I'm now going to explain to you how to live your life in devotion to the Supreme Person, doing all the complex things that life is made up of. Not this balanced thing that people ask, how do you balance your duties and your spirituality? You don't balance, it all becomes spirituality. And there's a system how to do it. It's bhakti. So now we're ready. We're at chapter 13. Da, 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 da. And a simple way of saying what chapter 13 is, it's the graduate study of the undergraduate study. You know what that is. Undergraduate is chapter 2, and graduate is chapter 13. It's the same points as chapter 2, but it's the graduate study of chapter 2. And the Sanskrit, each of the chapters of Bhagavad Gita, this Gita Jayanti, so we're going to speak Bhagavad Gita. Each of the chapters of Bhagavad Gita has Sanskrit titles. This one is Purusha, Prakriti, something, something. So it's the nature, Prakriti is nature, Purusha is the enjoyer. Nature, enjoyer, and consciousness. That's not what the Sanskrit reads. That's the poetic way of describing what that chapter is about. Srila Prabhupada said there are 2 ways to translate from Sanskrit to English. One is literal, and the other is with emotion or with devotion. And so it's not necessarily literal, but the essence is being presented. So this is the essence of chapter 13. And when one is trying to be an enjoyer, let's go back to chapter 2. In one of the first lessons of Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the first lessons for anyone of us trying to practice spiritual life in a world of duality, is, guess what? This is a place of duality. Matra sparshastu konteya sitoshna sukha dukkha da agama payo nityas tang satiksa subharata, which means it's winter. Those of you from India, if this is your first year of graduate study, keep your jackets on. Wait till the snow comes. It's been nice this past week, reasonably nice. Wait, this is Detroit or Michigan, so it's going to get a little colder and colder and colder. But no, India gets cold too. There's a number of us that went to Badrinath, or at least tried to go to Badrinath, but it was a little difficult. So some of us went anyways. Some couldn't go because mudslides. The buses that they were riding, they were stuck for 25 hours and had to go back because the police wouldn't let people go on the road because of the mudslide. Anyway, it's cold there. They just closed Badrinath and Kedarnath, when it gets a certain date, not to go by the temperature, they go by the date, they close the place up. It's snowed in. Right now it's snowed in. And then the thaw. So you tolerate it. Matra, sparshas, the perception of the senses, gives us the sense of duality. Happiness and distress, honor, dishonor, pleasure and pain, winter and summer season. You tolerate it. And when there's duality, we want happiness, but somehow it's not always happiness because it's a place of duality. And sometimes, because it's a place of duality. Now, what do you do when you want happiness and it's not always happiness? And even the happiness, check it out. Listen carefully. The pursuit of happiness means implicating yourself in the laws of karma. The pursuit of happiness, it's according to Krishna's words in Bhagavad chapter 2, it's dukhalayam ashashvatam. It's looking for water in a desert. By definition, a desert is a place where there's no water. But sometimes it looks like there's water. That's a mirage. It's just a reflection of the sun on the silicon, and it's not water, but it looks like water. So one may keep chasing water in the desert, but there's no water in the desert by definition. There's something that's some sparshaja, the senses contacting objects, and it says, ah. But that's not what happiness is. What's happiness? It's something that's everlasting and ever increasing. And it's with you all the time. That's what real happiness is. Ananda. That's what real happiness is. Some sparshaja is not happiness. It's dukkha. The distress is, it looks like it's happiness and you keep going for it and you get punched in the nose. And ashashvatam, it's temporary. Even the punch in the nose. The sensation of happiness is impermanent, and the punch in the nose is impermanent. I'm going to tell a little story. I was told to tell more stories. Because here's a nice story. It's called The Chinese Farmer's Story. Maybe some of you know the Chinese farmer's story. It's a nice story. And every good story begins with once upon a time. So once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer. And the villagers went to the Chinese farmer and said, "Oh, what good fortune. You have a horse. So you can plow your fields more easily than the rest of us that don't have a horse." And the Chinese farmer was a Taoist. So he said, "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. The horse ran away. The farmers went to the villager and said, "Oh, what misfortune. The horse ran away. Now you have to plow your fields like the rest of us." And because he's a Taoist, he just said, "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. The horse came back. And not only the horse came back, but multiple wild horses came back with that horse. And the villagers came to the farmer and said, "Oh, what good fortune. Now you have many horses. And now you can plow your fields even more easily than before." And guess what he said? "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. His son fell off one of the wild horses trying to train the wild horse how to plow the field and broke his leg. And the villagers came to the farmer and said, "Oh, what misfortune. Your son fell off the horse and broke his leg." And he said, "Good fortune, ill fortune, who can say?" Some time passed. the Chinese government went to war. And they passed a conscription act that said all able-bodied men between this age and that age had to join the army. And then the army recruiter came to the village, but because his son had a broken leg, they didn't take him. So the villagers came to the farmer and said, "Oh, what good fortune." This is the last time. This is the end of the story. What good fortune, your son didn't have to go to war because he had a broken leg. So, life is filled with duality, and sometimes it looks like, and sometimes it looks like, it just keeps, the kaleidoscope keeps moving, and it looks different. Just wait a while. Then the picture changes, and the picture changes. And what's good fortune anyways? What's happiness anyways? Wait a while. Whatever it is something else in a little while. So, who's the enjoyer anyways? It's a good image, right? So that's the topic, chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita, nature, enjoyer, and consciousness. Now we're going to cover 2 verses from chapter 13 that help us understand nature, enjoyer, and consciousness. Now, most of you are Sanskrit scholars. I can look around the room and I can see there's many Sanskrit scholars. But in case you're not a Sanskrit scholar like me, the word Purusha means enjoyer, and there's Parama Purusha, that's the real enjoyer, and then there's the imitation enjoyer. We're the imitation enjoyer. We're the Purusha, and there's Parama Purusha. So this word Purusha, that's used both this and the next verse, is us. That's the imitation enjoyer. So Karya Karna Karchadve Hetu Prakritir Uchate. Do you like Sanskrit? Should we say it responsibly? Let's do that. Karya Karna Karchadve Hetu Prakritir Uchate Purusha Sukha Dukhanam Bhoktritve Hetur Uchate. So karna has to do with causation, and karna is that which is caused by the cause and the effect of the cause. Just Sanskrit grammar. Karya karna karchitve hetu. Material nature is said to be the hetu, the cause of all material causes and effects. That's the first line. Prakriti, because this nature, enjoyer, and consciousness, so nature is Prakriti. Material nature, Prakriti, is said to be the cause, the hetu, of all material causes and effects. And then comes the Purusha, the imitation Purusha, that's us. Sukha Dukhanam, happiness and distress. Sukha, Dukkha. The living entity is said to be the cause, the hetu, of his own happiness and distress, because he's trying to become the bhokta, the enjoyer of Prakriti. It's a nice verse. I like the verse. Here's the translation. Nature is said to be the cause, Prakriti, nature, is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity, that's us, the Purusha, imitation Purusha, is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments, sukha and dukkha. We're the architect of our destiny. We can point fingers and blame something over there, somebody or something, or it's winter. But you chose to come here. You can't blame yourself. Yeah, but it shouldn't be so cold, or go to India and it shouldn't be so hot, and it should be what I want it to be. Sorry, Charlie, that's not how it works. So we're the cause by choices we make. We can't manipulate nature to be what we want nature to be, but the choices we make bring about our good fortune, ill fortune, like the Chinese farmer. various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Now that's, you see at the top, it's verse number 21 of chapter 13, and here's verse number 22 of chapter 13. Let's say it responsively. Purusha prakriti stohi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sadasadyoni janmaso. So again, it has two parts, the first two lines and the second two lines. Purusha prakriti stohi. Sta means being situated in. Living entity, Purusha, is situated in material nature. And bhunkte, same word, trying to be the enjoyer of prakriti, according to the gunan, that's the plural of modes of nature. Trying to be the enjoyer of prakriti, but we're restricted by the modes of nature. We don't have unlimited freedom. No, India got its independence, the Swaraj, but you're not independent. And America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, we're not free. We're controlled by the modes of nature. It's like a cow. It's a very simple. Material examples help understand spiritual principles. I've observed in India that village people often keep a cow, and early in the morning, there's a rope around the cow, and then there's a stake on the other end of that rope, and they place the stake in the ground in the morning, and depending upon the length of the rope, that's the circumference that the cow can graze for that day. Sometimes the rope is a little shorter, sometimes the rope is a little longer, but there's always a rope. In India, at least, that's the system that I've observed. There may be some other systems, but that's a common one. So those ropes, that's gunas. The mode of goodness gives us more freedom, but it's not unlimited. And then passion and ignorance. It's the shorter or longer rope, but we're under a rope, or the guna. So prakriti jan gunan, here's the translation. Living entity, material nature, thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes. Are we enjoying? Who can say? It's not real enjoyment. There is such a thing, but it's the imitation of the real thing. And that's material life. It's the imitation of the real thing. There is the real thing. And Bhagavad Gita wants us to be able to experience the real thing, what real happiness is, real enjoyment is. But we're not going to find it in the desert. Not going to find water in a desert or happiness in a place where it's dukkha and the shashvata. Just not here. I mean, you can try, and people try. Lots of people trying. Lots of people frustrated. And some people are at the top of the pile and wait a while at the bottom of the pile after some time. Just sometimes and sometimes, the place of duality. This is due to his association. So karanam, that's the word karna again. Karna guna sangha, by association with the gunas. The sad asad yoni. Yoni, it means a place of birth, like the womb of a mother is a yoni. So it's the children take birth from the yoni of the mother, the place of birth. So the place of birth of sad asad, or good fortune, ill fortune, or good and evil, amongst various janmasu, various species, has to do with our attempting to be an enjoyer within the modes of nature. Nature, enjoyer, and consciousness. So back to the question, who's really enjoying anyways? Who is there such a thing? There is such a thing. And the such a thing is one who is not involved in the modes of nature. So it's either the Supreme Person who's not involved in the modes of nature, or one who's connected to the Supreme Person who's not involved in the modes of nature. And otherwise, it isn't what real happiness is. There's something, But it's not what real happiness is. Real happiness is real freedom, or moksha, in a transcendental sense, completely free. And the one who is completely free is not wild, not unfettered by morality or ethics or virtue. They live by that, but they're not bound by that. They're moving in that way because that's their nature. They become enlightened, and they move in the world that way. Okay, a couple of illustrations. I like pictures. So the pictures, I like the picture a lot because these guys down here on the stage, they're just actors on a stage. There's the good guy and the bad guy. And they're having a duel over the maiden. Who's going to get to be with the maiden? And this guy thinks I'm free, that guy thinks I'm free, and they're both controlled by the puppeteer or the marionette. And they're not thinking that, they're thinking freedom. Good versus evil. So there we are, the good versus evil duality of this world. Look closely at the sneer on the moon that's up there on the upper right. And then there's the sun. It's got a nice smile, and so, good and evil. That's just an artist's depiction of good and evil. And that's the way of material life. There's this good and evil thing that goes on in this world. And so we're going to touch on two other topics, and then I'm going to circle back and we're done. Yay. So it's a nice depiction. This is the three modes of nature. Those three ladies at the top, there's like the three primary colors. Yellow in the upper right, red in the middle, and blue. And those of you that know a little bit about art or colors, you mix those three colors, you can make any color. Now, for some number of years, I lived in New York. It's not where I grew up, but I lived in New York for a number of years. And there's a paint store called Pint Chicks. And you can take Pint Chicks, a little chip of paint from your wall, and if you want an exact match of that color, you can bring it to Pint Chicks. They put it under this refractive index machine, and they mix the colors and get exact, expensive 1 gallon of paint, exactly that color. Because it's just a mixture of the different colors. You can make any color. They know how to do it. Expensive, but if you want, they can do it. So similarly, all variety, it's just a mixture of three modes. In the material realm, three modes. So the person below, one is the worker, the other is the supervisor of the worker, and the supervisor is thinking, I'm the controller. But he's controlled. And the one that's controlled is controlled. We're always controlled. We're not independent. I hope you get the message. The freedom is not in the material world. There is a place of freedom, but it's not in the material world. We're under the modes of nature. And not only the modes of nature, so here's the three deities. Brahma, he is the presiding deity. So those three ladies, they have somebody they're answerable to. That's Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, the three modes of nature presiding deities. And above them all is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in addition to the modes of nature, there's also karma. I like this. I mean, I don't like what he's doing, but I like the illustration. It indicates the fellow that's there at the bottom has a human face, and he's getting his head chopped. And the one who's doing the chopping has the animal's head. So you inflict misery, pain, and suffering onto other living entities, and commensurate with the pain and suffering you inflict, there's a reaction. For every action, there's an equal, Isaac Newton. And you grad students, you know all about laws of physics, and then some. So why is there so much violence in this world? Have you noticed? Is there a reason? It's a reaction to violence. What goes around comes around, and people are acting in ways that are violent. I just got someone I know, a very nice devotee. He visits universities all around the country. He just met somebody from Nepal. You sent me a photograph of the fellow, and the fellow was born in a Brahmin family in Nepal, was very pristine Brahmana. He came to do his graduate studies in America, and he stopped being a pristine Brahmana. His eating habits went out the window. He started doing what everyone in the West does because of association. And he was really happy to meet someone that lives by standards, even they're living in the West. So but how much of this goes on? How many, without naming it, steakhouses and burger houses and chicken houses and this and that, and next time you're driving around in your car, look around and see how much violence there is. You don't see the violence; you just see the edible, but it's a product of violence. So there's violence. It's inevitable. Try to bring a stop to violence without addressing the root cause of the violence. It's not going to stop. I mean, you can jump up and down and have causes and do things. So Bhagavad Gita is teaching how to live a life of virtue, but not just cosmetic, but from the inside. There's consequences to, this is an illustration of lower consciousness heading down those stairways. So you see greed, ignorance, envy, anger, pride, lust, and then over here, enjoyment. So mode of passion, mode of ignorance, and then the stairway going up, to a higher consciousness place, mode of the heavenly realm, Swarga, and then there's beyond Swarga, where it's beyond Sattva, it's Shuddha Sattva. That's Bhagavad Gita message. Similar illustration, there's consequences for, in this life, being lusty or eating indiscriminately or being charitable or worship. There's different outcomes, and this is the last slide. So we're going back to verse number 22. That's from Nature, Enjoy Your Consciousness. Recite it again. Purushak prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. So that's the material platform, and there is an option or an alternative. And the alternative is, this is a nice little painting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Those of you not familiar with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, let me introduce you. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, who has come in the role of a devotee of himself. I'll say it again. That's to the background. That's Krishna. So at the end of Bhagavad Gita, that's the concluding message of Bhagavad Gita. Surrender unto me. You know the verse? Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam praja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami masu. So Krishna gave that nice instruction. Conclusion. Just before he like plays a trumpet, da 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 da, most confidential knowledge. Here it is, Arjun, because you're my dear friend. Here it is, da 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 da. Just take shelter of me. Mam ekam sharanam. And business finished. Material business finished. Spiritual business begins. Material business finished. And that's Krishna's final instruction. And after Krishna departed, this is a very nice teaching from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna considered, after my departure, Kali Yuga has begun. And in Kali Yuga, people aren't going to know how to do this. So what to do? I could send someone or I can empower someone. I'll come myself. So he did. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's what the illustration is meant to show. Giving the teachings of the how to perform bhakti in such a way that material life is finished. And the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are not that you have to become a mendicant. Guys, gals, quit school. That's not what the message is. Trash it. Just become a mendicant. That's not the message. The message is the message of Lord Brahma unto Krishna, or Krishna unto Lord Brahma. Stanes tatakshruti. Stay in your position. Develop your career and your stuff. And at the same time, Shrutikatam Tanavan Manobir, engage in hearing. Same as what Krishna says in chapter 7, text 1. Touch renew. Hear from me. Touch renew. It's just by sacrificing the hearing process, stay in your position, but hear the name, qualities, pastimes, Bhagavad Gita's message, etc. Just engage yourself in the elevation of consciousness principle so that your work in the world doesn't become diabolical, or you become the tool of a diabolical person upstairs somewhere doing diabolical things and you're the instrument of his diabolical things. The light's on, and you're going to, the encouragement here, and I'm going to end, the encouragement here is become knowledgeable in Bhagavad Gita and hear the message of Bhagavad Gita and engage in hearing the glories and the name and the form and quality, etc. Evolve in spiritual consciousness while you stay in your position and be responsible. Do your duties of life. If you'd like to become a sannyasi, fantastic. I'll help you. If you want to become a nice, grahasta or a worker in the world, I'll help you. But follow the teachings of Bhagavad Gita side by side with the worldly thing. Don't just do the worldly thing. That's Bhagavad Gita. And these teachings are presented to me by my spiritual master, so that's the final slide. Now, my apology for the plan that was put on the billboards and all the other things, the signs, it was my mistake. I had forgotten that I had this other class. So here we are. And when we're done, to have some discussion, and then you can have nice kirtan. The harmonium is here, and you all like chanting and dancing. Any comments or questions? Yes.
I'm pretty curious about. I just found it interesting when you were talking about violence, especially that one slide.
Yeah.
That you the slide that you mentioned with depicting violence,
Yeah.
and then after that you were talking about how how it is. Okay, so I just wanted to know a little more about your personal views on it, especially when you mentioned um like like walking around India, all the violence that's hidden and stuff. It just feels to me. So, do you like classify when people are, butchering animals for sustenance or something like that? You think of that as violence as well?
Oh yeah.
Of course. And you incur negative karma through that.
You take the life of others, your life will be taken. Maybe not tomorrow, but at some point in time. And you're opening the door by being violent. You're opening the door for violence.
But it just feels to me like when we were discussing being an enjoyer of nature,
Yes.
just by looking at the behavior of other species that we were talking about,
Yes.
It just feels like, isn't that the way the world is set up?
Yes, it is. And the lower forms of life don't have a choice. They don't have freedom. They don't have higher consciousness. They can't choose. A lion gets hungry and he sees, prey, and he runs. And they run away, but sometimes they don't run away fast enough. Yes, it is the way of nature. Now, human form of life is meant to be something other than an animal. But some people want to be like animals because they're more powerful. They put the animal in a place where they can slaughter, and they do it.
I guess I can wrap my head around how certain things feel unethical, but if we're biologically designed to be able to, I'd say, like, derive sustenance from some things,
Oh
then
yeah, that's nature.
yeah.
You have a body, you have to eat, but you have choices what you can eat. Get into it. Is the acidity of a human stomach the same as the acidity of an animal that's a carnivore? No. Are the teeth of a human being the same as the teeth of a carnivore? No. The structure of the human body is suited not for that. It doesn't mean people won't want it, but it's not meant for it. By
Thanks.
nature's design, etc. Now, you want to go further with it?
No, I mean,
Since time immemorial, I'll go further with it.
sure.
There are people that there's a tendency to eat meat, and therefore, within the codes of the Vedas, with creation comes the Vedas. Where does the Vedas come from? From Narayana. And there are codes in the Vedas for people that have that propensity, even their body isn't designed for it. So there's a procedure on the dark moon night to sacrifice a goat with certain mantras, blah, 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 blah. And the Brahmana that recites the mantras says in the ear of the goat, not any animal, not as open the slaughterhouse, but Mam Sa, as your life is being taken, you now have the privilege to take the life of the person who took your life. It's right within the codes of the Vedas. Knowing, back to your question, there's propensity, even the body isn't suited for it. Still there's propensity. Or, take anything, lust. Therefore, there's a procedure for lust. And it's not unrestricted, but restricted. And there's codes for it, that what kinds of restrictions, etc., 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 etc. There's sanskars for it, with procedures and. So and the purpose of those procedures is for elevation of consciousness, to lift one above the by design, the material nature's design to involve us in material nature, to lift us above material nature. At least, to higher modes, and then to beyond the modes. And then some people don't care. Feels good, do it. Hedonism. You want to pursue it more?
No, I just found like I the slide that you showed twice with the verse that was talking about how
Yes.
people are just enjoyers and
Yeah.
like the good and evil is based on us. So that slide I just found a little contradictory, as in um,
Because
because if it's up to us, as in
we have free
everything
will.
is given to nature, and given as in we have the three modes of nature, and we're just enjoying that
Okay.
in a sense.
Is your position, we really don't have free will, we're just victims of the three modes of material nature? Is that your position?
I don't have a position on that yet.
Well, that sounds like that's what you're saying.
Okay.
There's the modes of nature, we're the enjoyers because we're impelled by the modes of nature to be the enjoyer. We're implicating ourselves in the ways of material nature, good and evil. That's the material situation to a degree, yes. Even in that degree, there's choices. And then there's ways to, I choose to not implicate myself in the modes of nature. That's higher consciousness. And with proper teachers and proper teachings from the teacher, one can go beyond the modes of nature. Is it possible? Not only it's possible, that's Bhagavad Gita. But at the same time, Bhagavad Gita is explaining how material nature works. That's with these two verses.
I think I get everything. Just one more follow-up. Sorry.
Go ahead, fine.
Yeah.
I like the discussion.
Okay.
I hope we get some more of this.
Yeah. I think it's just let me just phrase this. So we have the enjoyers of nature, as you said,
Yes.
like us.
Yes.
And I don't know, it just feels like I've given you the. So when you talked about the people achieving the higher spirituality, breaking out of these three modes, or
Yes.
getting that enlightenment, as you were saying,
Yes.
um, so does that mean like it? Some of the stuff they sounded like rules, right? Like so you were saying certain things cause negative karma,
Yeah.
just as a rule,
Yes.
as sanskaram,
Yeah.
and like we have those rules to like avoid that.
Yeah.
So these people who've achieved that greater understanding of everything around them, do they cease to interact with nature the same way?
No. Let's go back to Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Arjun threw down his weapons. I shall not fight. No violence. Krishna said violence. So there's these three words: karma, vikarma, and akarma. So which of those three did Arjun do? Vikarma. No, akarma. Abandoning his duty is vikarma. His argument was, if I do, then there's karma. Krishna's argument, if you don't do, it's vikarma. You're further bondage. It's sinful. But akarma, you do it because I want, and then there's no bondage. Or, let's take another one. The lust example. The answer to the question is yes. The question is it possible for a man or woman to be engaged in lust where it's free from karma? The answer is yes. Then how do you do that, please? There's instructions of how to live one's life karma-free. Now, supposing I don't want restrictions, then you get karma or vikarma. But with restrictions, under the codes, the descending privilege that Krishna gives those that have such tendency, material tendency, you engage your material tendency under codes, and you're free from karma. And the children that you produce are also potentially free from karma. You follow those codes. And there's Garbhadan Samskara. There's a procedure where begetting a child releases the child from the act of sin or indulgence in matter, prakriti. But you have to follow the procedure. And you have to have good teachers and good teachings. And you can become karma-free, living in the world. Do stuff. Go circle back to what I said earlier. Don't give up your occupation. Pursue it. It's material. Pursue it. And maintain your higher consciousness. How do you do that? Touch, renew.
Listen.
By sound, by the spiritual sound, one can be elevated to the spiritual platform, even in the material world, but not of the world.
I lost you at the end.
Huh?
I lost you at that last part.
You lost me. I'll say it again. One can be in the world, but not of the world. In the world, we're spirit souls. We don't change. We're involved in Prakriti. Here we are moving around in Prakriti. But we don't become Prakriti. We can become in contact with Prakriti without being controlled by Prakriti. In the world, but not of the world. You can be a transcendentalist. In our disciplic line, one of our teachers was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He had 10 children. During the British rule, he was the High Court judge. The British didn't have Indian people in High Court judge position. They put British people. They put him because he was so qualified. So he served in the government of India in a High Court judge's position with 10 children and wrote 100 books.
Yeah.
And they're really elevated. Now, where did he was good at time management. But you read his books, and his consciousness is in another place. And of those 10 children, one of them became a pure devotee, a Naishtika brahmachari, but some of the other children got married. So it's not a cookie cutter thing. We're individuals, and we have individual propensities, and there's a way to move in the world as a sannyasi or as a grahastha or as a whatever. In the world, but not of the world. By higher consciousness. So what's the formula for higher consciousness? Sound. Hear the Vedic sounds from the right source. Regularly. Daily. For a prolonged period of time. But for purification of consciousness. And stay there. In the world. I'm repeating the phrase 6 times. But not of the world. In the world. Prakriti stays Prakriti. Okay. Let's see if there's somebody somewhere else that would like to share some comment or question. Oh, you got the... If there's no comments or questions, we'll have kirtan. That's fine with me. Who's the kirtanier? Is it you? Here she is, the kirtanier. Now, I've had a very busy day, and I'm going to just say a mantra and just like poof, disappear. But I hope that's okay. It's okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.